Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing, the podcast for and with manufacturing leaders. It can be a challenging industry struggling with accountability, turnover, and engagement. Join us now on this journey as we gain new insights, moments of clarity, and self-awareness. Let's step outside of our comfort zones and uncover new perspectives to make your next day better. Grab your coffee and let's go. Mindfulness Manufacturing community. Hey, I wanted to start today thanking one of our listeners, Kim, who reached out and gave some feedback on the podcast, which was so appreciated. And Kim talked about a few things, feedback for us. And, one of the things that we don't always think about, but sometimes we're very hard on ourselves, and just being aware of that. And sometimes it's okay to not get everything done or not show up as that person that's always doing the right thing, because that's how we learn, right? And we've talked about it before, but this whole journey that we're on together is more like the golf game. We're just trying to hit the green more often, through this podcast, that we can just continue to add that value for people in different industries, but definitely manufacturing, and then just taking that different approach. And that's kind of what we've done together. And Kim reminded me of that, the importance of, we want to be more aware. We want to show up as our best selves. And sometimes it's okay not to do that, but just be aware of it. I said, I could have done that different. Now I know better. Now I'll do better. And that's okay. So I just want to really thank her and encourage others, because that kind of puts some air in my tires, keeps things flowing for me, which helps me do my job of just delivering to you, right? The audience, the listeners. So I've been doing the last few episodes by myself, and it's been great. It's been fun. I also know that there's things that I don't always think of. And I've always tried to align myself with people that have similar values, but different perspectives that can push me, make me feel uncomfortable and think in different ways. And I was in that conference in Kansas City and met different people and made some lasting connections. And one of the people that I met was Dave Baker. And I was introduced to him from another colleague with some different connections, and we found that, hey, you guys kind of hang out in the same space. You're both different. I'm from Canada, trying to find my way, and Dave's out in South Carolina, and that's actually where I am today at this beautiful farm. And we're actually together here today, and we've brought him on to share him with you, the listeners. And welcome, Dave.
Oh, thank you, Trevor. Man, it's a pleasure and an honor. Just love this concept. Love the conversation. Thank you.
And I knew that Dave was someone that could push this podcast to the next level. And I asked Dave about being a guest, and then the more we talked, it was like, man, I'd like to have Dave on as a co-host. So I'm excited to announce today that Dave is going to come on and join us down this journey. So thanks so much for agreeing to come on and grow this community, Dave.
Yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to hanging out with you, Trevor, and just talking with future guests and just providing valuable insight, into being more mindful in a manufacturing environment or at home, and just in your personal challenges.
Yeah, so we'll dive right in. So tell listeners something about you, maybe a story that kind of relates to what would make you interested in this type of topic, and maybe just something about your past. Yeah,
well, that's interesting. Today we are living the pandemic, right? And it reminds me of an experience I've had in my career in manufacturing and HR and in frontline leadership, where I had the opportunity to lead a team in a sterile filling room or a sterile filling environment in the pharmaceuticals industry. And, it was kind of interesting. I'm to lead a team of people, fully gowned, gloves, hood, and yes, that mask, right? So, it's just I'm leading others, trying to inspire others through a window, plexiglass window, with just their eyes. And that communication, that challenge was, not easy, to say the least. So to gown up and communicate in that sterile environment was not something encouraged. You weren't supposed to talk, right? Just because it expels the air from your lungs in that environment. So
Right.
Here we are in a pandemic, and the mask we're no stranger to masks now. And leading others, inspiring others, how to do that most effectively is just a great learning experience.
So what's something that you look back in that situation, Dave, that you were doing that could help people today when they have team members and colleagues that can't see their facial expressions? You can see their eyes.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind most is just take advantage of the opportunity when not masked to consider body language, facial expressions, and the ability to follow along with someone as they talk. We take that for granted. And when you slow down and say, wait a minute, what is this person telling me that I perhaps would have overlooked if I were not mindful of? Man, what a cold splash of water in the face when it's like the only way I have the communication mechanism to lead others is just their eyeballs, eyeball to eyeball contact. Man, how much easier is it for us when we're not covered up? To where do we really take advantage of that? It's just it was a great reminder for me. And so we overcome the challenge by creating some ground rules and expectations on timing, the nature of the topic, the issue. We would revert to signals with our hands, although minimizing movement, again, in a sterile environment. But creating some ground rules up front on what the expectations were in communication.
That makes me think of just general conversations. You say, don't take advantage of what we have sometimes where, hey, we don't have any masks on and you can see everybody. And so many times I might be having a brief conversation with someone and there won't even be any eye contact. So it's like we have all these sensories to communicate, and it's like, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. I'm just working on this. Okay, small conversation, and you can go through that whole conversation, and that person may never make eye contact with you.
Yeah.
And here you're in an environment where that's your only method to communicate, and it can be so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it reminds me of a time we were in a conference room. We had prepped for hours, and it was time for that big presentation to the CEO and all of their staff in attendance. And we had just promoted an individual and were wanting to introduce him and showcase him to the organization at large with what he brought to the table technically. Well, man, I could have crawled under the table when about 2 minutes into it, he was talking to his paper, nose about 8 inches from the table, clicking slides on a PowerPoint, never once looked up at the CEO or anyone on the staff. And afterwards, the feedback we got was, don't ever put that guy in front of us again. And you talk about an uphill challenge from there that time after in credibility and trust that was breached on something so simple as making that eye contact. Because the content was excellent. We were updating, the update was being made on the new product lines and the organization restructure and, good content. but the guy heading it off, it was unbelievable. He kind of looked like the old Charlie Brown walking, down the road with his head talking to his toes. And it just, man, that was a very awkward moment. Again, something as simple as that eye contact and being mindful of the impact that can have.
Yeah, we always want to take what do we learn out of these uncomfortable situations. And here you have all those sensors available back then, but the one thing that is true in all of us, we all want to be seen. And it's such a common thread of, why do they want a union? Or why is this person just not connecting? And oftentimes it's just because you haven't connected. Have you really looked into that person's eyes? Have you paused briefly enough, not looking at your phone, not thinking about the next conversation? But when I think about you working in that sterile environment, I'm thinking that it's like a structure that would drive good presence, because there's not the option.
Right. Yep.
Hey, I can't be looking at my phone when I'm talking to this person, because I can't really be talking. I'm really looking. And they've done those experiments where people don't even know each other, and they look in each other's eyes for 4 minutes. And what those people can learn, and someone that you don't know, if you're really feeling like you have a lot of courage, try it. I've done this in a workshop, and it's uncomfortable, but it's like, wow, like you can learn so much just by the eye contact. It's the presence, it's the awareness, and that's how we grow.
Definitely.
So Dave, you had talked before, and this is one of the things that definitely caused us to have some greater conversations and involve us working together. I've always been a lot about working with all the people, right? Your subject matter experts are your people that are on the shop floor. And you've had a real passion just around that blue collar workforce and how you support that. So tell me a little bit about that. What does that mean to you? What's that connection about?
Yeah, I learned early in my career that the folks in a manufacturing environment pulling handles at 3 a.m., they're in it trying to make a living, doing the best they can. And their leaders, their bosses, their supervisors, team leaders, the ability or the way in which they treat that person pulling the handles at 3 a.m. on third shift, it means everything. And I made that observation when there were, new in position, up and coming leaders that had all the technical expertise, but yet consistently were challenged in advancing in the organization because they left a wake of bodies in their trail. And there were no advocates for them on first shift, second shift, third shift. They did not have discretionary effort being provided by those that they were on the same team with or leading a team. And it was because it's like they checked their mind out. They just checked out and thought, well, I'm a technical expert. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to show everybody how smart I am. But when it came down to how did they make that person's life easier, more fun, exciting, did they inspire them to go home and tell their spouse, their family, their kids, their significant other what happened at work today? No. I mean, what they went home and told about was how much of a jerk their boss was, right? And I learned early in my career that this was not good. And so, a lot of folks don't have choices in their job career. I mean, they get up, go to work every day, come home. Their life's goal and ambition is to get on the preferred shift, to get that next raise, the annual raise, right? And so, they don't get to choose their boss, right? No more than we get to choose our parents, but they don't get to choose their boss. And no, it's not as easy as just saying, well, like it or leave it, they can go find another job somewhere else. Well, guess what? No, they can't. They don't have that education, perhaps, to give them the freedom, the experience. They don't have, maybe a geographic restriction. They just can't pick up and leave and go pick their boss. It doesn't work that way. So that is when I said, you know what? While I'm passionate for the one on third shift, pulling the handles, making the production, day in and day out, man, it's that leader. That's the one that if I can make a difference with them, the ripple effect is just, it's exponential, the impact. And so that's where I focused most of my career in not only manufacturing leadership for a short time, a couple of years, but then for most of my career in human resources, in leadership, in coaching, and developing people to be more mindful of the impact and the way that they lead others, and the impact that and mindfulness on the impact that they have on others. It's just, man, you talk about fun, right? And there's
Absolutely.
no shortage of opportunity to do that.
Yeah, all the statistics show that the engagement level in manufacturing is less than the average industry, and it doesn't have to be that way, because it is fun when you get people engaged. And I like that perspective of, like, if you're leading a team, are they going to go home that day and say something positive about what happened at work? Or are they going to go home and just like, oh my gosh, thank goodness I'm back home and I have to go back in again tomorrow?
There's two things that come to mind that are so memorable for me in my career in manufacturing, and that is, one, that quote unquote silly certificate, right? Or that certificate we print off and just kind of throw to somebody. Well, until I had the opportunity to be with an employee at a company picnic, and I heard their spouse say, yes, Charlie came home, that certificate was framed, and it's on our mantle. It's front and center in our home. And, quite honestly, I didn't remember what the certificate was for. But it poked me in the eyes and it said, Dave, this circumstance was like, man, never underestimate the power and the impact of what something you may think is so little or insignificant or routine, that there's folks in the working world, in industry, in manufacturing, that what you may think is little is just huge for them.
Cost savings, always looking for cost savings, and the money that gets left on the table, just not taking that approach, or just not having that skill or that focus. We get so ingrained in tasks. I've seen companies lay out like, these are 20 things that we want to accomplish, and these are all our goals, and we got to get this done, and there's going to be, be problems if we don't get it done. And it just becomes pressure on yourself, and that kind of builds that silo. And then the intentional skill of just going back to looking in the person's eyes and engaging with them, and then making them feel, at 3:00 in the morning and pulling that handle, man, everyone's relying on you for that, right?
Yeah.
And here's why.
And I had just mentioned discretionary effort, maybe flippantly a second ago, but discretionary effort is something that you can't buy. Discretionary effort is something that you are rewarded by from the folks that you work with, in which they reward you with their discretionary effort as a result of how mindful you are with respect to them and where they stand. And I went to a funeral of an employee, and as an employer representative, I was shocked at the impact that just my presence at this employee's funeral had on the rest of the family. Again, another reminder of the times in which, well, it's just part of my job, it's what I do. But it wasn't until years later when I saw a family member thereafter that they reminded me of the fact that I was there. They even told me the tie that I had on back then, right?
Wow.
You'd be hard pressed to catch me in a tie nowadays, but they told me the tie I had on. That's just, that pokes you in the eyes to say, Dave, what you say, how you say it, never underestimate the impact that you have on people. And that estimation that you have on other people is what I call mindfulness. How the mindfulness, being mindful of, where is this person? Where are they today? What kind of financial, personal, relational challenges are they enduring? Because we all have them, current, real time or not, right? And just that, recognizing that, paying attention to that, man, I put that in the bucket of mindfulness all day long.
I love it. Yeah, there's many different ways to define that, and I like how you make that connection, Dave. And for inspiring leaders that are listening today, that's it. There's many different aspects of it, which we'll go through with different guests over the podcast. But I can tell you that getting a human connection, just talking to someone a couple months ago, and they're just saying, yeah, I was asked to work during the shutdown, and the leadership kind of all shuffled, and there wasn't really anyone I was connected to, and I said no to working the shutdown. But I know that if that other person was working there, I would have worked the shutdown, just because I know what she did for me, and I wanted to give that back.
Yeah.
Like my employees, they won't do this. They won't. There's nobody signing up on the weekend. Well, what kind of a connection are you making with them?
That's your problem, not their problem.
Exactly.
Right? And that's fascinating.
Well, Dave, this has been a great introduction. And if we want to have one thing that you leave the listeners with today, what would be that one thing for the listeners?
That's hard. That's a great question. And to boil it down to that one thing, it would have to be, look, pay attention to what you say, how you say it, because all of that will be remembered long after the crisis at hand, the unique circumstances at hand. They will remember you, not for anything other than what you said and how you said it. And I am all about adding value for the time in which you invest in listening to this podcast. And that one thing, when we're done, when you hit that stop button, hey, look, what are you saying and how are you saying it? Is it optimized for impact on that person in which you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes with them? So I hope that is beneficial.
That's awesome. And like the great Maya Angelou said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So last question I'll leave you with here is, we know that most of our thoughts, just the way our brains work and the neuroscience, is that most of our thoughts lead to negativity. We're thinking about things that haven't happened yet. We're contemplating the future. And going back to what Kim said in the beginning that really gravitated with her was around, just being kind to ourselves. Like we've done some great things. And what I was curious about you, Dave, is that I know that you must have done many great things. When you think about that.
Okay, rephrase that. Many great things. No, don't throw me in that category.
But Dave, when you think of your past, what you were mindful of, maybe something that really had a positive impact on others, something you would do all over again. And you just was like, wow, that was good because I helped others. What was that moment for you?
That's great. Another great question, Trevor. Off the top of my head, it's as simple as we had huddle up meetings daily in manufacturing at the start of the shift, and the leadership team would be in a work center at the results board. And during shift change, the leadership team stood around in a circle, and they all had their arms crossed. And as people came and went, because it was that shift change, I became increasingly aware and uncomfortable with the amount of deference or ignoring those that were looking at the leadership team as they walked by, trying to make eye contact, trying to engage. And I believe, and I got some input, some feedback from the workforce on, man, you guys are a bunch of stuffy, arrogant folks. You don't even, you won't even look at us when we walk by. And I connected the dots, and it was all about this issue. And so it was as simple as moving our team meeting farther away from the aisle in which people walked by to reduce the expectation that there was this interaction. Because to be within 5 feet of someone and they walk by and look at you and you don't acknowledge their presence is not good.
No.
Right? And so we just moved the meeting center 10 feet farther into the work cell. And the whole dynamic changed to where when there was that interaction with people, it was intentional and it was direct and it was responsible, as opposed to the awkwardness of arms crossed, giving the cold shoulder, not making eye contact, not reciprocating a greeting. That's not good.
No.
For the leadership team and the way that they show up. So what I'm telling you, what I would do all again, and my insistence would be, set yourself up for success in the environment that you create, in what you control and what you can't. We had to have the meetings on the floor. That was important to the culture and the values. But we just moved it. We relocated it. It wasn't, that's their problem. They got to get over it. We're busy, right? That doesn't work. So we physically just made a change, and it was an incredible difference.
Yeah, and we talk on this podcast a lot about just being self-aware and doing those things, but it's a balance with structure, right? A simple structure change. That is still mindfulness, because you're saying, hey, in this environment, I'm going to make eye contact, and then I'm not going to have that connection. But if I move this over here? So yeah, a lot of times is we can be more successful as leaders, just recognizing that, hey, it is a little bit of work to move this, but this is the right thing to do. And it's going to have a long-lasting impact. And now it's not just about, hey, Dave, try harder. Try harder to be more focused. Yeah. How does that work? So that's a great one. Well, thanks for sharing, Dave. Look forward to many more episodes. We got some great guests lined up. And we'll see everybody in a couple weeks.
Yep, looking forward to
it. Hey folks, thanks for taking the time and joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone and make their next day better. If you haven't subscribed, do so now, rate and review. It means so much, and we will share your comments on the next episode in a couple weeks. If you want to drive results, the first step is realizing how you show up.